Hey guys, Dev with Crime Hive. We are continuing with the Vanessa Guillen story here. There's just a lot going on, and I got an update from Andrea, a viewer on Crime Hive, and she was able to get me the charging document with this case before I was even able to find that. So I thank you for that, and that's what we're going to talk about. This actually gives more details of what happened in the case than what I gave in the previous video, because again, some of these times I'm going off other investigative reports. I always love to go off the affidavits and the charging documents and try to get my hands on that information, because that really gives us the real story of what happened. And it's like a probable cause statement. It gives all the facts and circumstances of what happened and why they're making an arrest, and specifically with Cecily, if I'm saying her name right, Cecily, she's got an interesting name there. But anyway, her last name's Aguilar, by the way. She, again, if you guys aren't familiar, is the girlfriend of Aaron Robinson, who killed himself after police had closed in on him, and so we weren't able to listen or hear about an interview with Aaron Robinson to get more information from his point of view and the information that he had to give. But it's quite clear from Cecily, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's quite clear from her name, or from her, that this case really came about and really developed because of her. So we learned that she really helped investigators, and I'm going to talk about it in the affidavit. So we're going to go more in depth. I think you guys are going to find this interesting, because we always, again, as true crime fans, we have this curiosity factor, and we want to know. We want to know what happened and why, and we want to know details. And that's what I'm going to give you today, is more details, rather than just speculation. And I know some people were wondering what the heck's going on with this case, because there were so many discrepancies before when we were learning about this early on from the Army investigation side, and then you got police, FBI, marshals. There's so many different elements involved here, and we had so much information. So let's get started with this case. Again, if you guys like these kind of videos, subscribe to my channel. It's Crime Hive. I'm going to start doing some live videos on Facebook too, if you guys want to find me on there later down the road. But let's get into this affidavit, okay? This is really the criminal complaint, and I'm going to narrow this video down here. So this is what we're looking at, and this is against Cecily Ann Aguilar. That's her full name, and these are written up to give us the information of what really happened, okay? So this was written, this was filed July 2nd. That's just yesterday. Today, as I'm filming this is July 3rd, 2020, and this particular charging document comes from a special agent in the FBI, who's working in conjunction with the Army and other investigative elements out there in Texas. So I highlighted some important points here, and we're just going to kind of go through this and really discuss some of the aspects of it. So on April 23rd, 2020, okay, just so you guys remember, Vanessa Guillen reported missing on the 22nd of April. So here we have the 23rd. There's a captain in the Army that reported Vanessa Guillen had been missing by her unit. So that's really when this investigation begins, okay? And again, I know there's speculation from family and others out there wondering, what is the Army doing? Well, a lot of times there is an active investigation going on that we just don't see. And this is what we're seeing right now behind the scenes of just what they were doing while this investigation is essentially restricted to the public. They just can't give certain information out because it can compromise it. And so as we're going through, here's what we learned. These are all new details here. So first off, I want to start off, there was a witness that came forward that saw PFC Guillen. She's now a specialist. Apparently she was promoted to that next rank, so you might hear her referred to as Specialist Guillen now. And again, unfortunate story. She's now deceased, but she was promoted to specialist, and so she leaves the arms room. That's the armory where she was working. And here's what we find out. She visits the armory of another location at Fort Hood And guess who it's controlled by? It's controlled by Specialist Aaron Robinson. Okay, he, again, right here, Aaron Robinson. He's the one that killed himself when confronted by police. Okay, during this crazy investigation that's now really developing right now. So what we learn is apparently there was, they were trying to confirm serial numbers on a weapon or equipment. So witnesses verified that Vanessa leaves the armory room, and this is where she leaves her Army identification card, her bank card, car keys, barracks card, all that information that we'd learned about before. And the witness states that her property was still in the armory room when he secured the armory room for the day. Don't know who this witness is. Could it be the sergeant that was involved potentially in the sexual harassment case that is this witness? Could this person be involved in the case that we don't know about right now? Unsure, but right now this affidavit doesn't really explain that. But as we go through further, here's what we learned. They start going through Vanessa's phone records quite early on, and they see that her last outgoing text message from her phone was to none other than Aaron Robinson again, okay? One of the last people known to have seen Vanessa. That is a huge, huge clue right there. Investigators always hone in on the last person to have seen somebody during an investigation. Oftentimes, the last person to see somebody that's been killed or murdered is a suspect or a person of interest. I mean, it's just, it's just how it happens. I mean, obviously, you can't hone in on one suspect. You got to have that open mind. You got to, believe that there could be other suspects. You can't just hone in on one, which happens sometimes in investigations where they think this person is a suspect and they try to do everything they can to prove that he's or she is the suspect and ends up being somebody else. But in this case, again, Aaron was one of the last people to have seen Vanessa. So we learned that, so he was in the armory room, reads the serial numbers and equipment afterward, and gives Vanessa paperwork. Okay, and this paperwork, she's then supposed to go to the motor pool, which is just another area on the base where she gives them this information to verify this equipment. And people at the motor pool say they were going to prepare this paperwork, but she did not arrive with the papers. So she apparently goes from seeing Aaron Robinson to never arriving to the motor pool, right? And so that's a huge red flag. So they already know, okay, is Aaron Robinson telling the truth, or is there more to this story? This is from the very beginning. They're already knowing this information, right? And it comes out to really be accurate, too, in who was involved in this case. So let me get rid of that. So anyway, what happens here is she leaves the army room, okay, the papers weren't verified. So going down the list here, 4/28, this is April 28th. They then interview Robinson, right? And here's what he has to say about it. So he says that he finishes some work and he went to his post residence that he shared with his girlfriend, Cecily Aguillar, right? This is where she comes into the picture. People wondered, okay, how did investigators know about her? How did they know about the girlfriend? They knew early on, okay? So she's already involved in this investigation. And because of his interview, because of Aaron's interview. So apparently he leaves the rest of the night, according to him, except around 6:30 p.m. when he says he has to come back to his post to sign onto a government computer to enroll in training. All right, okay, so that's kind of interesting. Just that one aspect there, he apparently has to go back to base. Interesting that he says that. I wonder, they didn't seem to corroborate that. We don't know if he actually did log onto this computer to do that. Maybe he did. Maybe he was trying to create an alibi. But this is well after Vanessa Guillen was murdered, and so this is days after. So maybe he did actually do that. This is on the 22nd, though. So this is on April 22nd. He's saying that he did this. So I'm curious about that 6:30 p.m. time frame there. And we'll go more into the affidavit here now to explain what happened, because here's what we learn more. On 5/18, so May 18th, 2 additional witnesses were interviewed. Again, I don't know the names of these people. I don't know how they're involved. But They say that they actually saw Robinson pulling a large tough box with wheels that appeared to be heavy in weight. And it was coming out of the arms room, the same room where Robinson worked. So there's been some discrepancies. Some reports had mentioned, there was blood found. It wasn't very accurate as far as which, where. Was it the armory where Vanessa worked? Well, according to the affidavit, it sounds like they saw Robinson leaving or wheeling this tough box. Just to give you guys an idea of what this tough box is. This is kind of an example of what a tough box is. So it's got wheels. You can wheel it. A lot of times the military uses it to store, weapons, gear, equipment. They're loading it onto their vehicles when they go out in the field and they do training and all that kind of stuff. So this is just an idea of what those look like. These tough boxes, often waterproof, to protect gear, expensive gear in the military. So anyway, they said that they saw him wheeling it out of the place where he worked. Okay, so that tells me that Vanessa had gone to Aaron's area of the base, to where he was, and to his location, and it seems like that's where she was actually murdered, not at her original location where she worked, where she left her ID and barracks key and all that. It seems that she had left all that there, but went to this other location to meet up with Aaron, and that's where she was unfortunately murdered. And we're going to get into more details in that. What do you guys think so far about this from the other reports that we've heard? Do you guys feel like you're getting a better idea now of this case? This really has the information that a lot of us are looking for here. So I'm going to continue on. And so what they see is the two witnesses have then observed Robinson load the tough box into his vehicle and drive away. Okay? And that's on 5/18. Now on 5/19, that's the day after, this is where Robinson consents to a search of his cell records. Okay? This is really important here because, in my other videos, I was like, why are they targeting the Leon River? They have to know something. They have to have some sort of phone records. I mean, there's a reason they're searching this area. And this is what we're going to find out. And this is exactly why they searched that area. It's from these cell phone records. So they look at the records and they review the phone logs. And it shows that Robinson called Aguillar multiple times during the night of April 22nd. Again, that's the day that Vanessa went missing. So he's calling her multiple times, and then even as late as 3:30 a.m. Okay? Doesn't seem too crazy. It's a little late, right? Some people stay up late, but it's odd that it's so late. But here's where the investigators start to pull apart this story, okay? So again, you tell one lie, you're evasive one time, and once investigators learn that, it is game over. That is a huge red flag. They start seeing these inconsistencies in the story, and this is where we start seeing inconsistencies here. He's receiving calls from Aguillar throughout the day. Now, here's where it gets really interesting too, with the interview with Cecily, right? This is the girlfriend again of Aaron. Now, she was interviewed on June 19th, okay? Now, she states this originally, this is her first story, okay? She states that she was with Aaron Robinson all night on April 22nd, 2020. And then she was asked why Robinson would call her after midnight if he was at the residence with her. Because remember, Aaron's saying that he was with Cecily on base, right? The entire night, except for that 6:30 time frame where he went back to sign on to the computer. So she says, she said she could not find her phone. Okay, so she can't find her phone, and she had Aaron call the phone to help her find it. And then here's where we find this here. The statement, however, is inconsistent with the length of the calls. Okay, so they're already figuring that information out. Robinson called Aguillar several times throughout the night, and the calls after midnight were for lengths greater than 1 minute. So this wasn't just, hey, hon, I can't find my phone. Can you call it real quick? They find it, they turn it off, phone maybe, goes into the couch or something like that and gets lost for a tiny period of time. This is several calls There's obviously something else going on here. Now, Aguillar, during a re-interview, this is where she states that she lied in her previous statement, okay? So this is where we really learn that she actually starts helping investigators, okay? We're going to learn, well, not quite yet, but we're going to learn that she actually was one of the pivotal points in this investigation that really opened it up. And a lot of people were wondering, you know, how did this come about? How did they start to hone in on these things? And it's because of Aguillar, okay, the girlfriend of Aaron Robinson. So Aguillar states that she was with Robinson on the night of April 22nd, where now she's saying they take this long drive into Belton, Texas to, you know, look at the stars. So she's creating this romantic fairy tale, if you will, this story. Investigators are not buying it. She's already lied to them, right? And they know this going in, and so they just continue to document this concoction, this story that she's putting together, and it's not accurate, right? So they let her go with it. That's how these investigations go, is they will let the person spill the beans, talk as much. They want you to talk. Remember, not advised to talk to investigators without an attorney. There's a reason for that. They want you to give information so they can then start to figure out these inconsistencies in the case, right? So again, so they look at the stars and then they go home, or they go to the park. Let's see. After going to the park, they return home, okay? So then they start analyzing the phone records of Robinson's telephone, right? And they see data reveals that approximately 1:59 a.m., this is 4:23, you know, Robinson's cell phone was identified in this vicinity. This is in Belton, Texas, okay? It's around a bridge. Cell phone was then tracked along the Leon River. This is why they were searching that area, okay? And we didn't really know why. We just knew that they were reports had seen people searching that river, investigators searching that river. And so again, it just shows they're a step ahead, a couple steps ahead of the information that we know and that we now know. So he was in that area for approximately 2 hours. And just to give you an idea of that location that we're looking at, I pulled this up just from the map. This may have been from a period of time earlier. It looks like there's construction going on, but there's the bridge area. And then this kind of looks like that tree area where she may have been located from the other report that I'd mentioned. So, you know, the dense tree area along the bridge area. But we're going to talk more about it, but this is just kind of a general idea of where that is. Let me know if you guys are on base over there in Fort Hood or you know that area. Help me out here with that. I'm not too familiar with this area, but this seems to be the location according to the affidavit of where that was. So as we're going through that, so they're realizing the data is there, and then based upon that data, they start searching it. Now, here's what they find at this location, okay? Again, more details that I wasn't able to give in the last video because now I have the affidavit here. What they find is a burn site, okay? The earth was disturbed, they found out, and they find, lo and behold, it's the plastic tote or tough box that was found nearby where Robinson's phone pinged. Gosh, I can't tell you guys how much these phones are helping investigators nowadays, right? The phone records, the GPS, the tower points, all that information. You just can't get away from that unless you just don't have your phone with you, right? Most people have a smartphone with them. Everything is tracked, okay? And they start tracking that. They find this information out. In this area, they say the soil beneath the burn site was remarkably softer and moister than the soil found at similar depths. So they're analyzing all sorts of stuff. They even notice an odor of decomposition, right? And keep in mind, there's also dogs that can sense an odor of decomposition. That can help investigators. So didn't mention dogs there, but that's really common for dogs to be used to, I mean, they're trained. They have noses that can sense far greater than a human can. It's just amazing. You know, you've got bomb sniffing dogs, you've got drug dogs. A lot of times there's a certain specialty a dog has, but and then there's dogs that can sense, they can smell the odor of decomposition. So no remains were found right there, right? And so what we keep learning as we go down the affidavit about 1 p.m. This is on June 30th, right? This is just a few days ago. I mean, this affidavit was put together it was just filed just yesterday. This is where we learn when I had my other video where there was contractors working along the Leon River in Belton, Texas, and they discovered human remains, okay? Now, they said that investigators identified scattered human remains, okay? Now, this is interesting. This is another thing that I didn't know. Appeared to have been placed in a concrete-like substance and buried. So we're going to learn more about that, what happened there. That's another interesting aspect about this case. So here's what we learned about that. Now, 8:30 p.m., this is June 30th, 2020, Aguillar, I'm not going to say Cecily. I don't like saying that for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, Aguillar was interviewed and admitted, this is where she admits that Robinson told her that on April 22nd, he struck a female soldier in the head with a hammer multiple times at his arms room, killing her on Fort Hood. Okay? Huge lead right there. I mean, that's just that right there. Big bit of information. And here's what we learned from there. That when she says female soldier, she didn't know it was Vanessa at the time. She later confirmed that the soldier was Vanessa. She just knew, and it makes you wonder, was she kind of a guinea pig in this situation? Was she really that culpable? Was she manipulated by Aaron? Was she just going along with this? Maybe fear for her life. I mean, I don't, you never know sometimes with these other people that get involved. And it's unfortunate. I don't know much about her background. We're talking about some pretty gruesome stuff here, though. Was she scared out of her mind and she just went along with it? Or was she manipulated through this entire process? And now she's looking at some really severe charges because she just happened to be involved in the wrong spot at the wrong time. What are your guys' thoughts on that? I always like to ask some of these questions here to get more information and start a dialogue. So we know that, according to Aguillar, she says that the female soldier, Vanessa, never made it out of the Army alive, right in the Fort Hood area. So she never made it out of that. And then she says that Robinson placed her in a box and moved the box to a location near the Leon River. Okay, so it's starting to come together now. We're starting to really fill in some pieces that we didn't know before. Now, on the evening of April 22nd, or the early morning of the 23rd, we know that Aaron picked Aguillar up at a gas station. So Cecily works at this gas station, and he took her out to a site near the Leon River near a bridge. Now, the box with wheels and handles was already at the site, okay? So Aaron walks her over to the woods, opens up the box, and she sees a dead female inside the box. This is the first time she's seeing this, and she's just, I mean, you can only imagine, did she care? Was she petrified and was just like, oh my gosh, this is really happening? And, so this is where that's where she discovers Vanessa Guillen inside the box. Now, they decide to try to decompose her body, okay? They try to dispose of and conceal the body of Vanessa, and they proceed to dismember her, okay? And I talked about that in the other video, but here's a little bit more detail on that I wasn't aware of. Apparently they used a hatchet or an axe and also a machete type knife, okay? And then we learned that they removed the limbs and the head from Vanessa, and then they attempted to burn the body, which I had mentioned before, but the body wouldn't completely burn, so they placed her in 3 separate holes, okay? And then they cover up the remains. Now, this is interesting because they're going to go back to this spot, and this is where we learn more about the concrete, okay? I was wondering what's up with the concrete. So here's what happens. They return to the site on a later date, Aaron and Aguillar, and and this is according to cell data as well. Remember, that's always being tracked. So prior to their return, they obtain hairnets and gloves, okay? And Aguillar purchased this as a bag of concrete from someone on Facebook Messenger. So this is where the concrete comes into play. Now, kind of weird, right? I mean, hairnets and gloves. I mean, at this point, it's like, okay, are they just watching a bunch of CSI shows, hoping they can get away with this at this point? Trying to, prevent DNA. By the way, my hair is getting crazy. I've never had it this long. I think I might just grow it out at this point. But you can be sure that there would be hair falling off if I were ever at a scene like that, which I never would be. But you know what I mean? DNA is so easily found at sites now. And so anyway, they think they can cover up their tracks. They put on these hair nets, right, and gloves, which they ultimately burn later on at their own residence, which I'll read about here in just a minute. So what they do is they then uncover the remains of Vanessa. They remove them, and they continue breaking down the remains. Okay, so they're really trying to cover this up, right? The remains were then burned again. I mean, they just apparently can't seem to figure out how to burn her body, which is in our favor, obviously, if we're trying to find these people and convict them of crimes. They just didn't know what they were doing. I mean, they're not, some people thought there was a serial killer working the base. I mean, there's a lot of speculation about that. There still may be. I mean, we still got Gregory Morales. We don't really know what's going on with him. A lot of other mysteries that I'm going to come out with another video and talk about with all these other sexual harassment cases that are flooding the base that are coming up. There's so much going on around that base. You got to wonder what's going on out there. But anyway, back here, what they do is they're trying to break down the body. They burn the gloves and the hair nets. They then place the remains back in the 3 holes with the concrete. So now the concrete's involved. They're trying all sorts of stuff to try to, limit anybody from finding Vanessa, right? Or just try to hide this evidence as best they can. Now, they burn their clothes. We also know that. They also burn their clothes later that night at their residence. So again, it's like, are they just watching all these CSI movies? Or are they just, what's going on with them? They then concocted a story about Aguillar and Robinson taking a long drive to a park. So this is where they came up with the story. Okay, we got to figure out, listen, we were looking at the stars, we were at this park, and then we left, right? They're trying to come up with this story now. And then prior to June 30th, 2020, we know that Robinson had been confined to his barracks room on Fort Hood, so on the base, and he later left, okay, that night. And then Aguillar, so here's what's interesting here, okay? Aguillar placed a controlled telephone call to Robinson, okay, wherein he never denied anything they did to Vanessa Guillen and her body, okay? So this is a controlled call. From what this is saying, she is absolutely helping investigators now. I don't know if she's trying to get a deal, or if she had a deal at this point to try to save herself, but she's apparently trying to get Robinson to admit to some of these things, and he apparently just doesn't deny it. I don't know if he necessarily admits to it, but you'll learn more here. So she continues to assist law enforcement with locating Robinson, because he had left the base. Remember, he leaves, and Robinson was seen on foot in Killeen, Texas. Okay, this is where he was approached by law enforcement, brandishes a pistol. We find out it's a pistol, shoots himself in the head, kills himself. Confirmation from the affidavit right here. And then, of course, again, we say Vanessa, can't definitively say the remains are Vanessa, but based on this story, it's absolutely looking that way. And, the investigation is still pending. So that's really the end of this affidavit. And then Aguillar was charged with conspiracy to corruptly alter, destroy, mutilate, or conceal an object, or attempts to do so with the intent to impair the object's integrity or availability for use in an official proceeding, okay? And that's what she's charged with right now, okay? There may be other charges as they learn more, but that's the charge that she's looking at. It's going to be a federal charge. Federal charges are no joke. You don't want to be charged federally. It's harsher penalties, Yeah, so she's in jail right now, awaiting these charges here. And that really just concluded the affidavit. And I really wanted to give you guys that information because it tells us more. It kind of fills in just more gaps as we're curious. We want to know details. And hopefully I've been able to do that for you guys. Let me know your thoughts. Comment below. You know, if you like these kind of videos, again, share them. You know, I want to get this kind of information out to people. People have a right to know these kind of things as we learn about them, and I've got other stories I'm covering as well. Again, this is Dev with Crime Hive, and I will be back in another video. All right, you guys take care. We'll see you.